ACC Big Ten Challenge, the football kind. We've got Notre Dame finally making an impact in the ACC. I think that starts this weekend. Syracuse owning the Atlantic right now. I think they have complete ownership of the Atlantic Division right now at 1-0. Can anybody possibly challenge the Orange? And really, nobody's played Florida State like Boston College has the past two seasons. Can the BC Eagles break through on Friday night and knock off Florida State for the first time anyone has within the ACC for the past several seasons? This is ACC Breakdown. We come to you every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time with the best bloggers in the conference to talk nothing but football. And the bad matchups are pretty much out of the way. We've got a few more this week, but finally some football that really, really matters this week. So we bring in Jim Hammett of Cardiac Hill on SB Nation's Pitt platform. We've got Cam Underwood from the State of the U talking some Miami football, and Brittnee Taylor Newman from football.com. So Brittnee, let's start with you. And not a whole lot of interesting action last week, although that Virginia-Notre Dame game kind of captured the nation, at least for a few minutes there right at the end when the Cavaliers put a big scare into the Irish. Just your thoughts about what happened last week and where we stand after 2 weeks of the season in regards to the ACC.
Well, I think it was an interesting weekend to be sure. That Notre Dame-Virginia game was definitely one to watch. Hurt seeing them lose their starting quarterback. For sure, that produces all kinds of questions for them. But one that I was really surprised by was Louisville's loss. I did not know that, or could not have predicted that we were going to come into the season and Bobby Petrino would be 0-2. I know that he's starting a lot of young guys. They have a lot of freshmen. But I, for one, came into the season thinking that we would see some more from them. So I was really surprised by that loss.
Yeah, that's a bit rough. First two games, Louisville challenging themselves with Auburn and Houston. It comes back to bite them a bit with an 0-2 start. Cam, through 2 weeks, not necessarily just last weekend's play, but where do you stand on the ACC right now, and what stands out to you?
You know, ACC is looking like another strong year. Deshaun Watson, who we talked about the last time I was on a couple weeks ago, looks very good for Clemson. Miami is, we're winning games, but still have couple flaws, so obviously you want to see going forward. Florida State still very vulnerable, and we knew that they were without Jameis Winston and a lot of those guys that lost off that team, but they still find a way, and Dalvin Cook is an absolute beast. So that's the kind of thing, and just trying to see hopefully that there's not going to be more injuries, because week one you saw James Conner from Pitt, sorry about that, Jim, Terrell Hunt and a couple other guys also from Syracuse, their starting quarterback, he's down. And a couple other guys. So, just making it through the week as, competitive teams and hopefully, be healthy so we can see the best brand of ACC football we can going forward.
Hey, Cam, are you baiting me for a little argument right out of the gate here when you say the ACC's off to a strong start? 0-5 against the other Power 5 leagues?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You got me there.
All right, Jim, what do you got from the first few weeks? Pitt with a couple wins under its belt, going to a Power 5 game itself with Iowa, and what else do you see out there?
Right now, it just kind of looks like everything's kind of falling into place. There hasn't been any real big surprises. Obviously, Brittnee mentioned with Louisville, and you look at Louisville, you never expect them to go 0-2, and obviously they're staring down a very difficult game tomorrow night with Clemson. So, going into the season expecting to see Louisville 0-3, it just was, caught us off guard totally.
Yeah, the ACC was really the first conference to step out on Thursday night and play a lot of Thursday night games out of the big conferences. We used to see a lot of really worthless matchups on Thursday night, and the ACC, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, really stepped out and started scheduling some decent games on Thursday night, and I think it's brilliant. You get the national stage to yourself. If people want to watch college football, they're watching your teams, and the same thing pretty much on Friday night with Florida State taking on BC. Brittnee, out of those two games, what really catches your eye? What are you looking for?
Well, I think with the Friday night game, Florida State at Boston College, that's historically been a game that has given them a little bit of trouble. Jameis Winston even saying a couple of years ago that was the toughest game that he played that season. They have not beat Florida State since 2009, but this has all the makings of an upset Friday night game. You know, it's an away game for the Seminoles. There's two things I think that I'm looking at in that game. One is the run game. For Florida State, we don't know which version of Everett Golson will show up. He was fantastic in week 1, and in the first half of week 2 really kind of struggled, wasn't able to complete any passes, had 6 yards for the first half. So I'm kind of wondering which version of Everett's going to show up. And, of course, as we mentioned earlier, Dalvin Cook has had a fantastic showing so far this year, setting records all over the place. So I think you'll see him carry the offensive load if Golson is not able to be accurate. And the other thing that I'm looking at in that game is both defenses. Florida State has been able to hold both of their opponents to under 300 yards in the first 2 games. Boston College has allowed only 102 yards total, yes, 102, but they played Maine and Howard, so those numbers are obviously very skewed as well. So I'm wondering what we'll see from Florida State's defense and then what we'll see from Boston College's defense against a real team. I think those will be the 2 keys to that game. For Clemson and Louisville, kind of the same questions about Deshaun Watson. We all know he's super, super talented, but he's had some issues with injuries, things like that. He hasn't been able to get as much game time as, of course, Dabo Swinney would hope at this point. So how he fares on a Thursday night in Louisville, I'm interested to see that. And that'll be a tricky game because obviously Louisville fans will be riled up. They've scheduled a blackout game for that. They've 0-2 for the first time since 1998, so they are going to be looking for a win for sure. But as I mentioned earlier, Louisville does have a lot of freshmen. They did have a big game against Auburn, so that was under some bright lights. But at some point you do wonder if the pressure's really going to become too much and you're going to start to see them crumble even more, unfortunately. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking at for those games. Really excited to have college football on both a Thursday and a Friday night this week to watch.
Yeah, it's good stuff. BC off to that huge scoring advantage over 2 inferior foes, 100-3 in the first 2 weeks. Don't think they're going to be able to keep that kind of pace up. I think we've got the right guy to address the Florida situation because I caught some of that Florida State-South Florida game. I don't know if it was the early kickoff, what it was. I think they moved the kickoff back like 30 minutes for the U.S. Open on ESPN. And, yeah, Florida State just looked sluggish. And if anybody knows Florida high school talent between going to Miami, Florida State, and then the leftovers go to South Florida, and the leftovers are typically 3- and 4-star recruits sometimes as well. Cam, your thoughts about Florida State and what you've seen out of them thus far?
Like I said in the open, Florida State is definitely inconsistent. They're definitely a team that is young and that shows on the field, having lost a plethora of veteran players. And, you know, Bud Elliott from Tomahawk Nation, he's tweeting the game, obviously, covering it for his website and school. And, you know, they're saying, you know, the first game we got good Everett Golson, and then the second game we got bad Everett Golson. And, you know, we saw that for years at Notre Dame, that he could run hot or cold, and they've seen it, the gamut of what he can do in 2 weeks. And then they just said, you know what, we have this 5-star running back kid, this Cook guy, so we're just going to give him the ball. And, you know, USF was in it for a while into the third quarter, kind of like another school who played early. And, you know, once they started rolling with Dalvin Cook, then, you know, it was just the haves versus the have-nots. I mean, you can scheme all you want, but when you have a guy of that caliber, that's when things picked up. You know, they had an ejection in the game for targeting for their starting free safety, but then they bring in 5-star all-world freshman recruit Derwin James, who I think is going to start for them eventually. And then the defense took it up to a new level. And you're like, oh, they're missing a starting player. This guy that they just recruited from high school, like we're talking about, he's better. You know, and USF, they do have some talent. They have, you know, their quarterback is a South Florida kid. I live in South Florida, so I saw him play. Winky Wright, who went to Miami-Jackson High School, definitely has some talent. They're going to do some damage in their conference, but, you know, you really saw the disparity of talent. So, you know, Florida State, they do need to work on a couple of things, their consistency, obviously, their effort, and their just efficiency as you go forward. They have the talent to be a very successful team, but I think they're going to take a step back, and I think that we're seeing the beginnings of that because they won't be able to pull themselves out of a hole or a dogfight like they did this week against everybody every week. And, you know, this year I think that they're probably going to lose a couple games. They're still going to be a great program who has earned all the accolades they have, but it's definitely going to be a little bit of a step back in rebuilding and retooling a little bit for Florida State this year.
Yeah, I really don't mean that Florida State was lacking in effort. Just looked a little sluggish in the 11:30, the early kickoff. And if one guy was not lacking in anything in that game, Dalvin Cook was amazing and had 4 or 5 runs that were just automatic highlights of the day. Like, this is one of the 10 best plays of the day, and then he ripped off another 1 or 2 of those later in the game. So Dalvin Cook, really, Florida State, good thing they had him on their side in this one. Hey, Jim, for this weekend, what are you looking out for? And then I want to set you all up for my big Notre Dame question. So first I'll go to Jim in regards to what you're looking out for this weekend.
Well, talking about that Friday night game, I believe it was last year, week 3, Boston College hosted USC, number 9 in the country, and they pulled the upset off. So, it's kind of a similar situation. Florida State's ranked number 9, might not be the 9th best team in the country. Definitely one of those trap games to watch for the Seminoles. And obviously the game tomorrow night, Clemson has this high-powered offense. Louisville's playing for a lot of pride. So at the very least, I think there's a lot of high entertainment value in that game. If you don't want to watch the NFL, I think you're getting a high-level college football game. I think last week it was like Western Kentucky or someone. So definitely a little more interesting watch on a Thursday night this week.
Yeah, a little programming strategy there out of ESPN on that opening NFL weekend with the Patriots and the Steelers on that Thursday night. Not really going to go with the big guns from the college level to try to compete with that now that the NFL's kind of settled into their NFL Network programming on Thursday night. Better games out of college football and ESPN on Thursday nights. What's that, Jim?
I wanted to add one more. I didn't know it was the ACC Big Ten Challenge this week. That was normally a basketball thing, but you look at some of the matchups.
Exactly.
Illinois, North Carolina, Northwestern, Duke, Nebraska, Miami. It's kind of weird how that worked out.
5 games, exactly. That's what we're going to tab it this week, Jim. We're going with the ACC Big Ten Challenge. And then, of course, if depending on which conference wins, then you may have to call it the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Okay, is Notre Dame a member of the ACC? Okay, I was having arguments with 2 of our distinguished panelists from other weeks, specifically not so much Joey Weaver from the Rumble seat, but Ryan Cantor, trying to argue with me that Notre Dame's actually a member of the ACC. So, Jim, can you take this on for me?
Absolutely. Being a Pitt fan, being in the Big East for so many years, that this is nothing new to me. Notre Dame has just latched on to everything we've done for years now, so they are absolutely not a member of the ACC. And I don't fault them for what they do. They have a great setup. I mean, why would they share that NBC contract if they don't have to? So they're going to milk this out as long as they can. But no, they are definitely not a member of the ACC conference.
Exactly. Be self-serving. I understand it. You're going to look out for yourself. And if the ACC is going to go into those type of agreements with the Notre Dame, then go for it. But when people like Ryan, and I can't wait to have him back on here, is arguing that Notre Dame is somehow a member of the ACC and should be included in power rankings and indexes and all this stuff. What do you say, Cam? Notre Dame.
Being an alum of the Convicts University, as you want to call it, no, the Catholics, they can stay elsewhere, and they do, just like Jim was saying. They have their own TV contract. They have a national schedule. They play who they want in a good way. They don't play the bottom feeders of the world, and they don't have to because they're Notre Dame. They're going to play a good schedule that is coast to coast powerhouses. They're going to have the USCs. They're going to have whoever they want on their schedule. And that's fine, well and good. But no, they're not ACC members. They are for basketball, where we have to play, a home and home, or in their half of the ACC conference for basketball. But in terms of football, they're not a member, and that's not a slight because they have the thing going for independent football, and that's what BYU is trying to replicate, and several other teams. But they are the paradigm and the paragon for independent football programs, and that's just what it is.
Are they getting too much love in the national polls? They were taken to the wire by a Virginia team that's probably going to win 4 or 5 games. Sure, they destroyed Texas, but the game was at home, and Texas is looking pretty awful on offense. We know about the issues at Texas within the athletic administration. Is Notre Dame, I'll throw this one to you, Brittnee, Notre Dame too highly regarded at this point?
Well, I remember that was kind of the big debate after the first game. Was Notre Dame that good or was Texas that bad? And I personally lean towards Notre Dame being that good. Now I think I've kind of stepped back, and it might be a little bit somewhere in the middle. I think that they're good this year. I think that performance was exaggerated by some of the troubles that Texas had there in that first week. And the tricky thing is now, we've got a backup quarterback running everything at Notre Dame. Deshaun Kaiser, he's a redshirt freshman. We really have no idea what they're going to be like. We do know that they've set up quite the schedule. They've still got to play at Clemson and a couple of other really interesting games. Certainly this weekend's matchup with Georgia Tech is interesting. So I think we're really going to be able to see their true colors after a couple of these games against ACC teams. But I kind of took a step back after week one. I'm not sure if they're quite as good as we originally thought they were.
Okay, I know Cam's chomping at the bit to talk some Miami-Nebraska. Jim, of course, Pitt and Iowa. Let's, as we run down the games, I'll set them up for you. I want to highlight Central Michigan and Syracuse first. Not that we're going to talk about it for more than 8 seconds, but Syracuse 1-0. 1-0. They, for 1 week, lead the Atlantic Division in the ACC. So we got Central Michigan taking on Syracuse. We've got William and Mary, Virginia, and then it gets a little bit better. We've got Virginia Tech going to Purdue, bottom feeder in the Big Ten, Wake and Army, and then what Jim alluded to, in addition to Virginia Tech and Purdue, a 5-pack of Big Ten ACC games, Pitt, Iowa, Illinois, North Carolina, Nebraska, Miami, Northwestern, Duke, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, of course, highlights it. A couple of top 15 teams getting together. So, Cam, your take on Nebraska and Miami and how good you feel about the Canes coming into this one?
We've had a lot of content on State of the U this week. I think we had 7 articles today, have 4 or 5 more planned for tomorrow, and it's only Thursday. And then obviously leading up to, big content day on Friday. So we've had a lot of conversation about what's going on with Miami. Insofar as the Hurricanes, we finally saw some adjustments this past week as we played FAU, and the game was tied at 20 with about 10 minutes left in the third quarter, and then we went on a 24-0 run to stretch that game out. So we saw the halftime adjustments that maybe were lacking. If you think back to last year when we dropped that game to Florida State that we were leading at the half and other games subsequently, we saw some of those developments that we had not seen. Brad Kaya is still the truth at quarterback. Very, very good. The running back tandem of Joseph Yearby and Mark Walton is playing at a very high level, replacing Duke Johnson, obviously the all-time career-leading rusher for the Miami Hurricanes. You can't replace that with just one person, but we have 2 very good backs. And then Trayon Gray behind them is actually a starting-level back. Well, I won't say starting level. He took reps with the starting team. So the running game is very good. Offensive line is still a work in progress. That scares the life out of me. Brad Kaya had a throw to Joseph Yearby where he was actually being pulled by his collar, and he stepped up and threw the ball and almost got sacked on that play. So, even with the completions for 45 yards, there's still unsettling up front. Even though they're run blocking very well, their pass protection is not very good for the offensive line. Defensively, unfortunately, we did have an injury last week. We lost a starting linebacker, Darion Owens, to a torn knee up. They wouldn't specify exactly what that was, but probably a ACL, MCL kind of situation. So we actually have to reshuffle our linebacking core a little bit. And the defense is looking a little bit better at times, but still missing tackles and things. And, giving up 20 points to Florida Atlantic where they come out on the first drive and have a 46-yard run. They had a running back who had 128 yards in a quarter and a half, or, basically a half a football. That's a little bit unsettling. So hopefully we're going to get some of those things together. It's a big week for us. It's a huge week. This is a traditional rivalry. We got our first championship, this one right here, because we beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. So this is a thing that goes back a long ways. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a tight game. If we played our potential, if we do what we need to do, the Miami Hurricanes will emerge victorious. But in Al Golden's 4.5 years, we've seen that there are many times when we don't do what we need to do, and that is what gives me trepidation. So, hopefully we play a strong game. Hopefully we come out fast and focused and strong and furious. But right now I think the line is at 2.5 or 3, and I think that's fair with Miami, the favorites right now. So it's going to be a close, tight game. I'm an alum. I'm partial. I'm biased. I want to say Miami's going to win, but I need to see them do it.
Cam, I fancy myself as a little bit of a college football historian, and I believe actually that one and that one also finished off with Nebraska wins in the Orange Bowl as well.
Yeah, no, yeah. So if you're back on me with the cameras, both of these right there.
Yeah. So those Nebraska fans, they're a proud bunch. So if you mixed it up at all with them, heard anything from the Huskers?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit from them. You know, they're very boisterous, like you said. They're a very prideful group. You know, they're looking forward to their team coming and rolling us this year like they did last year. They won by 10, 41-31. So, you know, for them, it's the same old, same old. So they expect to come in here, run the ball, be dominant, and win that game. And for Miami Hurricanes fans, we're looking for things to be different from last year, but more consistent with what we've seen this year with that level of play. So, you know, it's definitely going to be a primetime game with that 3:30 Saturday kickoff.
Hey, Jim, you got a quarterback situation. Chad Wojtek, I thought he had a nice freshman season. Got a little bit more of the offense under his control late in the season. Got off to a decent start, at least statistically. I didn't see the games, but there could be a choice made by Pat Narduzzi in regards to which quarterback he goes with this week. So can he set us up for Pitt and Iowa?
Yeah, to touch on the quarterback situation, obviously, you know what? Nobody really anticipated this going on. A lot of us really believe Chad Wojtek had a lock on the job, and he did play very well at the end of last year, going into Miami, picking up a win for us to go bowl eligible. You know, so he has some big wins under his belt. He put up some good numbers, but it just appears right now that Jim Chaney is not impressed with him at all. The new offensive coordinator, he came from Arkansas, and actually, as a matter of fact, he recruited Nathan Peterman while he was offensive coordinator at Tennessee. So right there alone, there's some familiarity between Peterman and Chaney, and that's kind of leaving Wojtek in the dark a little bit. So many of us expected Wojtek to come in and have a big junior season, but at the same time, you have Peterman more familiar with the offense, obviously, being a Chaney recruit. So it's very jumbled right now as it looks. I'm expecting to see Nathan Peterman against Iowa on 8 o'clock Saturday night.
Okay. Do you have a good feeling about this game?
You know, Pitt and Iowa have done this series 3 times in the past 6 or 7 years, and every game has come down to one score. Pitt got them once. I think way back when Shady McCoy was still the Pitt running back, they beat Iowa. Then I believe Pitt went out to Iowa the day Pitt joined the ACC. Pitt had this big lead. Todd Graham was the coach, and Iowa came back and won the game. Then, of course, last year, Paul Chris, they were up at halftime and again lost the game to Iowa. But all very close games. The programs are very similar talent-wise. They actually recruit a lot of the same areas. But, you know, a big key for Pitt is obviously getting the running game going. No secret about James Conner. But an interesting thing right now is Pitt has the 7th leading rusher in the country, Quadri Allison. So just, you know, a little bit of a surprise there that Pitt does have one of the top 10 rushers, and it's not James Conner. It shows you the depth Pitt has there. So it would be big to establish him, and of course Tyler Boyd, future first-round pick, he's going to have to come up big because I'm sure Iowa, even though Pitt has this running game, they're still going to be suspect without James Conner being the one toting the rock.
So Joey couldn't help himself. He had to tweet in that Notre Dame, clearly not a conference member, but certainly connected with the ACC at the hip. So there you go. Joey Weaver making his presence felt, even not being on the show tonight. So are we ready to make predictions? I know I'm throwing this at everyone, so if you're not ready to pull the trigger, we don't have to make predictions, but I'm going to throw them out there if you'd like to make predictions. Otherwise, I'd like to hear from each of you in regards to if you can see one game this weekend, what game is that going to be? So, of course, for Cam, we're going to let Miami-Nebraska go. We're going to assume that. One other game you'd like to see. Jim, same with you with the Panthers taking on Iowa. There's one other game you'd like to see. So, Brittnee, one game, you only get one this weekend that you can watch. What are you going to lock in on?
Ooh, I'm really, really intrigued by Georgia Tech this season, and I'm not just saying that because obviously Joey's tuning in. So I'm thinking I've got to go Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and I really want to see what happens with Notre Dame running now with Kaiser as well. So Brian Kelly against the triple option. I'm going Georgia Tech, Notre Dame.
Do you want to take a shot at these games?
Yeah, we live.
Go on record here.
Breakdown. Let's do it.
Okay. I'm going to assume we're going to toss out the garbage games. We're going to let those go. And we're going to start from the top on Thursday night. Important game here, first in the ACC, Clemson at Louisville.
I'm taking Clemson in that one. Maturity over flash.
All right. Florida State's at BC.
I'm going to take Florida State because of Dalvin Cook, but Florida State should be on upset alert about that one.
Oh, okay. All right. Northwestern at Duke.
Northwestern, because it's trendy right now. I don't know. They got a little something going on.
Yeah, they do. They beat Stanford and should be a decent game.
Yeah.
Duke is a 3.5-point favorite. I selected all these games, picked them on my fan-sided article, Big Ten and ACC. Anyway, Georgia Tech taking on Notre Dame, probably the game of the week.
I'm going to go ahead and put my faith in Georgia Tech because I don't really know what to think of the redshirt freshman Kaiser at quarterback.
Okay. Nebraska and Miami in South Beach.
Oh, I'm going to shield myself from Cam, but I'm kind of thinking Nebraska on that one.
Well, they won it by 10 last year. All right. Illinois at North Carolina. Not guessing that you've done a whole lot of research on this one, but still. It's the Big Ten and the ACC.
Yeah, I haven't done a ton of looking at the numbers. It's ACC Breakdown. Let's take North Carolina.
Okay. One more for you. We got Pitt and Iowa. Jim may have to cover his ears again. I don't know.
I might have picked differently earlier, but I think Jim kind of talked me into some things. I'm going to go with Pitt.
Okay. All right, Kim. Are you ready? You going to make some picks?
Yeah, actually, I'm in a ACC SEC Pick'em League with some of my friends, so I pulled up my email. It's right here. I'm good to go on all of the games.
All right. Do we start on Thursday night? Clemson-Louisville.
Clemson.
All right. We got Florida State at Boston College.
This is going to be a good game. It's borderline my game to watch just because of the inextricable link between Florida State and Miami for a number of reasons, but I'm going Florida State close.
And certainly in the midst of this, yes, highlight your game to watch if there's something in here that you really want to see besides the Canes and the Huskers. Georgia Tech in South Bend taking on the Irish.
Georgia Tech, just because I hate Brian Kelly and I hate Notre Dame for a number of reasons, and I'm not going to drag the show down with why, but I think that watching Paul Johnson just be ornery after having beaten them by 3 touchdowns would make me very happy.
Cam, I thought we were all professionals here, that we made unbiased selections.
I mean, there's times for that, but no, I'm a human with feelings and emotions, so no, screw Brian Kelly.
Okay, Illinois at North Carolina?
North Carolina.
And again, I'm going to throw the other games out the door, assuming that the ACC should hold serve, although Wake Army, we'll go with Pitt at Iowa.
I'm going with Iowa for the only fact that they're the home team there, and they just seem to play up for big games at Kinnick Stadium. I grew up in Michigan. I used to watch a lot of those Big Ten games on Saturday, at noon time kickoffs, and they get up for those games, man, and they play over their head. They've beaten teams that I see going in there. Like, there's no way that Iowa's going to win. They win by a touchdown. They win by 10. And I think just from me having seen that and having my heart broken by that a couple times when I was a child, I think that's why Iowa's going to win.
Cam has some of those Big Ten roots. They're still firmly grounded. That must be what I like about the guy. All right, the one last one we've got here. We got Nebraska at Miami.
Hey, man. Like I said, we're on record already on the website. This is going to be not a program-changing win, but this is going to be a solid win and a step in the right direction for Al Golden, a coach who's already on the hot seat at 2-0, having outscored teams that we've played like 89-20. Averaging 44.5 points per game, a lot of good things, but still no matter what happens, people want him fired or people want to talk about that, but I think this is going to be a thing that gets him some credibility, some buy-in, and a little bit more time. We're going to go Canes by a field goal.
I agree, Cam. I've got Canes 30-24. I've got that on record on my article, Big Ten and ACC, going at it. I just think Nebraska's lost a lot of playmakers from last year's game. It was in Lincoln. That's a huge deal in regards to Nebraska football versus playing in Miami. That was Brad Kaya's 3rd career start. He's got 15 games under his belt now. Threw a couple picks in that game, played pretty well considering the pressure on him. I just think Kaya's going to tear them to shreds. All right, and if there's one game other than the Huskers and the Canes that you'd really like to lock in on this weekend.
Yeah. And also adding on with Nebraska, Miami, they're missing a couple of their starting players who have gotten injured through the course of all season and the beginning of the season, while we're really only missing, Braxton Berrios, who's a rotation player at slot and starting punt returner, but we have Corn Elder, who's already returned a punt for a touchdown this year, and then Darian Owens with the knee, like I said. So, I think we're a little bit more of the healthier team and the home-standing team. Outside of the Canes, Cornhuskers game, which I will be at in the front row with the field pass. Yeah. Other than that, I'm going to stick with the Florida State game. We're on a collision course in October. Those are our biggest rivals that we keep playing. And even though there's other great games like that Georgia Tech game that Brittnee said, I got to keep watching Florida State because we're coming for them.
Cam, you better watch out. I might be tagging you for sideline reports, like updates during the game or something.
Yeah,
all right,
I
Jim.
I'm going to be in a spot for that, but okay.
Jim, so Pitt and Iowa was obviously your game. Any other game you'd really like to see this weekend?
I think Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, just two top 15 teams. And we've talked about. I've been on the show with Joey. They have a brutal schedule this year, and this is like the first one. And I think they have 3 more that like top 20 teams they have to get through. So I still have Georgia Tech as my pick to win the Coastal. And this doesn't affect that because they are not a member of the ACC, obviously. But I think that it's going to be a fun game to watch, and I don't know why, but I'm picking Notre Dame.
Okay. Yes, you're right. According to the official MarkRogersTV schedule rankings for this season, Georgia Tech the toughest in the ACC. All right, you ready to go, Jim? Thursday night, Clemson-Louisville.
Upset pick, Louisville. Don't know why. They're not going to go 0-3.
Yeah, they got to win sometime. Florida State's going to BC on Friday.
Florida State, like the
All right.
I like Dalvin Cook. He's the new top running back now that Connor's down.
Sneaky important game, Northwestern at Duke. Wildcats could go to 3-0. They could both get to 3-0, but people keeping an eye on Northwestern, they've broken into the top 25.
A lot of smart dudes. I'm going to go with Northwestern.
All right. We'll save, we got Georgia Tech taking on Notre Dame. We'll go right to it.
I think the Irish.
You did throw that out there, didn't you?
Yes, I did. But something about South Bend 3:30. I don't know.
Okay. I think it should be a great game. That'll be the one I will want to see more than any. Nebraska at Miami.
I like Miami. Cam will appreciate that Brad Kaya is my college football fantasy quarterback, so I'm gonna ride with him this week.
Yeah. There it is. There it is. I can't wait for this Clemson-Miami game. Got to get Cam on here with Ryan Cantor to mix it up between Deshaun Watson and Mr. Kaya. Illinois at North Carolina.
Tar Heels.
Okay, and finally, your beloved Pitt Panthers going to Iowa City.
Yeah, each week on Cardiac Hill, all the writers, even the basketball writers, we make our picks, and it seems from the emails, everyone's picking Iowa. I'm the only one picking Pitt from Cardiac Hill. This game, like I said, the series has been closed. Pitt and Iowa. I think Pitt's due to tie the series up 2-2.
Yeah, I kind of trust Iowa in this situation too. I have kind of thoughts and memories such as what Cam described of games in Iowa City when Iowa wasn't supposed to win. Not that this is the case. They're like a field goal favorite, 5 points, something in that range. But I think Iowa's going to pull it off, but certainly no big shocker if Pitt's able to go on the road and win this one. So it's finally a really good week of football. We had some clunkers last weekend. Georgia Tech won another game like 104-0. So finally some really good matchups to look out for coming up this weekend. We'll know a lot more about a number of these teams, especially Georgia Tech and Miami this time next week. All right, for Brittnee Taylor Newman of football.com, we've got Cam Underwood from the State of the U talking Miami on SB Nation. And also, repping SB Nation from Cardiac Hill, it's Jim Hammett, and it's always a good time. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock live. The podcast is available, and also the video podcast available on YouTube as well. It's ACC Breakdown every Wednesday night. See you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.
See ya.